What's up, guys? It's Ryan Allred here from Pro Play Games. I've got a deck profile video for you. This was from Vancouver Regionals. It was my third day 2 in a row, 3 weeks in a row, and my third time playing this exact same 60 card list, um, making cut all 3 times. Um, I'm going to go over the list really quick. It's, like I said, the exact same list I've been using. I've looked at making changes, and every time I end up settling back on the same list. But I'll go over the matchups I played and kind of strengths and weaknesses of the deck. We'll go over the list really quick. So for the Pokemon lineup, we're playing 3 Volcanion EX, 3 Baby Volcanion, 2 Turtonator GX, a Ho-Oh GX for our attackers. The Baby Volcanion's really good in a lot of matchups, especially if you go second. If you go second, Baby Volcanion's almost always what you want to attack with. So we're playing 3 of them. The only reason we're not playing 4 is that it's really not very good after the first couple turns. We also play a Nest Ball to help try and get that Baby Volcanion out. Volcanion EX we're using primarily for the ability. We generally don't want to attack with this. Turtonator GX is going to be one of our main attackers in the deck, just because it does a lot of damage. If you can use Kiawe to get it turn 1, that's great. We're only playing 1 copy of Kiawe, because honestly, if you get the Kiawe, that's great. If you don't, who cares? It's fine. You know, we've got other ways to still win the game. But when you do get Kiawe, it's strong enough that it's, worth spending the 1 spot in the deck for it. We've got a 1/1 Starmie, super big against Gardevoir. You need to have 3 energies on a Turtonator and 2 energies in your hand for steam ups to be able to knock out Gardevoir GX with Turtonator. So Starmie gets us 2 of those 3 energies, because you usually also have to attach to Turtonator to make it happen. Without Starmie, I just don't think you can consistently knock out a Gardevoir GX. So the only other kind of strategy you've got is to go for 2 shots with Baby Volcanion and Fighting Fury Belt. Which that strategy, it's a valid strategy against Gardevoir, but you're kind of relying on your opponent to not hit everything they need to knock you out. With this deck, you're kind of putting fate more in your own hands. That's kind of the list. Like I said, we've already been over it a couple times because this is the 3rd time using the exact same list. I'll go over the matchups really quick. Interesting thing about that tournament, I actually only played 3 different decks over 14 rounds. I played against Volcanion the first 2 rounds. I'm pretty sure they were playing exactly Igor Costa's list from Connecticut. I played against Drampa Garbodor, and I played against Gardevoir GX. Those are the only 3 decks, literally the entire tournament I played against. So the standard metagame is getting pretty nailed down by this point. I even think those lists for the decks I played against were all within about 5 cards of each other. It's just, we've got a pretty nailed down metagame right now. So obviously this deck is going to be pretty even against Volcanion. That's still a matchup I like to see, though, because there is a decent amount of skill that goes into it. You have several different attackers, so being able to prioritize them, given the situation you're in, is pretty big. I don't know, it can be a crapshoot sometimes, because if you power up Ho-Oh GX and your opponent can't knock it out, you end up being a turn ahead, and the whole matchup is a bit of a race. So if your opponent can't respond to the race, you kind of win, or vice versa. The Garbodor matchup, I think, is pretty favored for Volcanion. That can be kind of a crapshoot too, though, honestly. If you end up with a bunch of items in your hand and a Sycamore, you're left with the decision of don't play the game and lose, or play the Sycamore and power up their Garbodor. But if you hit like Baby Volcanion and a bunch of energy in your hand, and you can power up your board without playing any items, you're probably going to win. There's not a lot they can do against that. They can try and end you down to 1, but if you have your board set up, it doesn't really matter. Gardevoir is still an unfavorable matchup. Day 1, I played against it, I think 3 times, something like that. I beat it twice. You can win, definitely, if you play it better than your opponent, but if your opponent is good, they will win more often than not. So that's what kind of killed me in day 2. I played against it 4 out of my 5 games day 2, and I lost once, tied twice, and beat it once. So I was even on day 2 against it, but honestly, that's not very good. You kind of have to do better than that to advance to top cut in day 2. So really, even just being even is kind of rough. You have to do better than that. It's a cool matchup though. If they play Parallel City at the right time, it really messes you up. If they can do Plea GX with Sylveon and take your attackers off the board, that really hurts you too. Usually you'll end up taking 4 prizes pretty quickly, but those last 2 prizes are really hard to get as you start running out of steam and you'll have no energy on the board. Um, it's a rough matchup. But that's the deck. Going forward, we do have Shining Legends just came out and became legal, and we have Crimson Invasion coming in the next, going to be legal for London Internationals. I'm not sure how much either of those changed this deck that much. One thing I will say, Shining Jirachi is a good attacker in Garbodor decks. So that's one more thing that kind of hurts Gardevoir, because Shining Jirachi is really powerful against Gardevoir. So that might shake up the meta a little bit and give us a little bit less Gardevoir, which lets Volcanion shine. But beyond that, I'm just not sure how much those 2 sets will affect the metagame. We know Zoroark GX is a good card, but I don't know how relevant it is to any of the matchups. So I think Volcanion is still a good deck going forward. Right now I'm testing a lot of different things for next month for London. So I honestly couldn't tell you what the play is, but I do always like Volcanion. So it's definitely one of my options looking forward. Thanks for checking out the video. Like I said, this is brought to you by Pro Play Games and Ultra Pro. Our Pro Play Games A team is doing pretty awesome this year. So you'll definitely be seeing more of us. Thanks.